Jorgen Strand Larsen. I was at the Wolves game early in the season when they played Everton, and he was up in the stands. And at the time, it looked like he was going to Newcastle. So I pointed out the fact, you've made the point, he's only scored one goal all season. In mitigation, he had his head more than turned earlier in the season.
Yeah, and it was clear that I think he'd have loved that move to Newcastle. Newcastle, in the end, didn't come up with the money which Wolves wanted. And clearly, Wolves' asking price has lessened in this transfer window. And in the summer, if he doesn't move, then it will further lessen, because if they're a championship club, then they won't be able to get this sort of money in that window. So Wolves may be in a situation where they need to come down on their valuation in the final few days of this transfer window. So we wait to see what the cause is for this potential hold-up, or why talks may have stalled. But you can understand why a club like Crystal Palace may be having second thoughts about spending that sort of money on a player who has been out of form so far this season. I think what this tells us, and when you consider the amount of money being considered for the likes of Jean-Philippe Mateta, who has one goal in his last 10 Premier League games, a fee of around £45 million being discussed for Jorgen Strand Larsen, who's got one Premier League goal this season. It does highlight the fact is strikers come at a premium. There's not many goal scorers or guaranteed goal scorers you have in the Premier League. I think Igor Thiago and Erling Haaland are the only strikers who have more than 10 goals in the Premier League this season. Semenyo's been brilliant so far, but he's not a natural striker. But it does show number nines, there's not many of them, which is why the price is so high for them. Even Wolves, a club who perhaps have a need to sell, why they are still holding on for a fee as high as they can.
James says strikers are at a premium. And, I mean, Newcastle United really went for him. And this was against the backdrop of the uncertain future at that time of Alexander Isak. And as much as the narrative might have been, no, we want to bring in Jorgen Strand Larsen in tandem with Alexander Isak, I think privately they were thinking, look, if Isak goes, we need to sort ourselves out. And they really did go for it. They bid £50 million. That was rejected. They bid £55 million. And that was probably their limit. They said, right, we're out now. We're going to move on to other targets. And so it proved. Alexander Isak went, and Nick Voltemada came in to Newcastle United. So I can see what you're saying. Yeah, you know, when you're a player like Jorgen Strand Larsen playing for Wolves, and then a club like Newcastle United comes in for you, clearly your head is going to be turned. But look, we're in January now, and Wolves are in big trouble at the wrong end. I'm wondering now whether Wolves' approach has slightly changed in this window now, simply because they are now going to be in a position. There's João Gomez is being linked with a move away. Strand Larsen clearly being linked with a move away. They have to almost make it look like, yes, we are fighting to stay in this league, and we're going to make signings in this league to try and stay up, even though it looks next to impossible. It will be the greatest escape in Premier League history if they were to get out of it. But one other thing they have to keep in mind is if the worst case scenario does happen, which is likely to happen, and they go down into the Championship, do they need to cut their cloth accordingly in this transfer window as well? Because do they need to bring in players in this window that not only will give them a half a fighting chance of staying up, but also to come straight back up if they were to go down into the Championship? Furthermore, these players, these big name players that are being linked away from the club, they want to try and get as much money for them as they can, because how much value will they have in this January transfer window compared if they are a Championship club come the summer? Will the price be reduced then?
Yeah, the Championship tax if you are relegated. It's something worth bearing in mind. So I wonder if the sliding tiles are all falling into place. Jorgen Strand Larsen looks like he's headed for Crystal Palace. What does that mean for this man behind us, Jean-Philippe Mateta?
Well, there's been interest in him throughout this window. There was interest last summer as well. Jean-Philippe Mateta wants a new challenge now. He wants to play for a club who are in the Champions League, or if not, can compete to play in the Champions League next season. Nottingham Forest put in a bid. They're not a club in the Champions League. They're not a club that will be playing in the Champions League next season either. Unless they win the Europa League, then they will qualify, and they're still right in the race to do that. But they put in a bid earlier on this week worth around £35 million. We understand that Crystal Palace are looking for around £40 million for their top scorer, but a player who is out of contract next summer, less than 18 months to go on that contract, and contract negotiations have stalled. Jean-Philippe Mateta wants a new challenge. What complicates things even further is that the two sides play this weekend at the City Ground, live on Sky Sports, and it's thought that Palace are unlikely to respond to this £35 million offer, which is coming at the start of this week, until after the match on Sunday. The deadline The deadline is on Monday at 7 o'clock. So clearly there's not a huge amount of time. What that does mean is that Mateta's future looks increasingly likely to go right down to the wire on deadline day. He continues to train with the Crystal Palace first team, and whilst there has been all this speculation, and whilst he's been carrying a knock as well, he continues to play for Crystal Palace, albeit not at the level that we've seen in the previous 18 months, but he continues to prepare for this game on Sunday. We'll be hearing from Oliver Glasner tomorrow around 1:30 on Sky Sports News. Fascinating what he has to say this week. It tends to be blockbuster, but we wait to see what happens. There's a lot of time between now and 1:30 when he speaks. Will this Strand Larsen deal be confirmed? Will that be on, off? What has happened with Mateta as well? Because we know there has been interest from clubs in Italy. One club we understand aren't looking to sign Mateta in this window are Tottenham Hotspur.
Aside of just one more point of that, aside of the fact that they're playing each other, and that's, I mean, the fixture computer's been pretty cheeky there. But if you go back to the summer, I mean, what's the relationship like between these two clubs? Because Nottingham Forest, you know, after that appeal, got into the Europa League at Crystal Palace's expense. Crystal Palace then dropped down into the Europa Conference League. And you wonder, with that relationship, you think, oh, would they do business with each other? Well, a player's got 18 months left on his contract. Crystal Palace would have to entertain offers for Jean-Philippe Mateta. They don't want to get in a position where he stays in this window, if he is to stay, and then come the summer, you're looking at 6 months away now from being able to talk to clubs outside the Premier League.
Especially if he's not scoring as well, because that value is going to plummet as well. That might be the only concrete offer they get in this window, £35 million, and they might get to the summer having not accepted that, thinking, we can't get anywhere near that in this summer with 12 months left on his contract. And as Dharma's rightly said, next January he'll be able to sign a pre-contract agreement. They don't want another Mark Gay situation.
No, they definitely don't want another Mark Gay situation. I think Glasner probably wants none of it, but it's looking like 1 in, 1 out at Palace. Maybe 2 in, actually. Where are we at with a loan signing for Evan Gasson?
Well, let's give Crystal Palace some positive news. The fans there, they are close to making another signing. Evan Gasson has been travelling to London today. Palace have agreed a deal with Aston Villa to sign him on loan until the end of the season. We understand that there is an option to buy him in the summer. What is really interesting here is that Crystal Palace have had an interest in Evan Gasson in previous transfer windows. He's been a player they've wanted to sign, but he joined Aston Villa in the summer. Clearly things haven't worked so far at Aston Villa. He's yet to score in the Premier League, just 6 starts so far. Aston Villa fans may wonder why they're letting go of another player. They've just let go of Donyell Marlon. Yes, he has been replaced somewhat with Tammy Abraham, but Evan Gasson wants to stay in the Premier League. There has been interest from other clubs across Europe, but he wants to stay in the Premier League, and perhaps this could be a perfect fit. Crystal Palace need players in attacking areas to get them away from trouble and potentially end the season on a real high. They're still in the Conference League, and because the table is so condensed, they could still have a really good and a really high Premier League finish. With Gasson there, with Brennan Johnson there, potentially with Jorgen Strand Larsen as well. The start of the month felt pretty desperate for Crystal Palace fans, knowing the manager was going to depart, knowing Mark Gay was leaving, knowing Mateta wants to depart. Things could change so much in the next few days. They've got that huge game at the City Ground. Let's bear in mind how close those two sides are on the table right now. I think if Forest win on Sunday, they go level on points with Crystal Palace. You know the problems that Forest have been in the bottom of the table. Crystal Palace are sliding down the table right now. But things could change very quickly. If they get these deals done right, they get a result this weekend, things suddenly start looking much brighter.